Hello to everyone, and welcome to yet another Startup Fair session presented by CIVITTA today. We'll be talking about how to structure your growth, and we really want to cover a lot of different content in this session, and we hope that will be useful to you. So first of all, we will start with looking at what are the elements for success and sourcing examples from Uber experience. And I have Vytautas, who is an expert at CIVITTA, here by my side, and he'll be going through his journey and cherry picking what he thinks are those key elements that help companies grow. After that, we will move to another presentation by Rokas Šalaševičius, who is a partner at CIVITTA. Rokas will be presenting a customer lifetime value calculation tool and how data can help drive growth for a company and why it's a valuable tool for companies to use and how to interpret it and how to create that value. And afterwards, we will jump right into a discussion with four distinguished panelists who will all share their experience about how they got into top accelerators in the world and what was the value that they received for their companies. So stay tuned in till the end of the session. And now, without further ado, I'd like to present Vytautas Černiauskas and give the floor to him.
Hello and welcome. When I was finishing my MBA studies in Madrid in the beginning of 2015, representatives of this cool startup named Uber came to our business school to present the company. They told us how the app works, how fast the company is growing, what are the typical roles and responsibilities in each city. And at the end of the presentation, they told us to go to their website and see what kind of vacancies there are there. I wanted to come to Lithuania after almost 7 years after living in Stockholm, Madrid, and I noticed that they were searching for a person in Tallinn at this time. And I speculated that if Uber is growing so fast all around the world, that maybe they might come to Vilnius one day. And I proactively applied basically for a vacancy which did not exist. I sent my CV and a motivation letter, and here it turned out to be in the right place on the right time. 4 months, 1 analytics test and 6 interviews later, I got the job and once in a lifetime opportunity to start Uber's operations in Lithuania. Those first 10 months were very, very intensive. There were just the 2 of us in Vilnius. My colleague, she was responsible for demand and marketing, and I was taking care of all the supply. Uber was an instant success, and everybody wanted to try it out. And that meant that for me, it was an internal hustle to make sure there were enough cars on the road to meet that crazy demand that outstripped the supply. So it was like a startup within a startup, and you need to do everything yourself. There is no one to delegate all those tasks to. I was doing everything from driver onboarding to vehicle inspections, document checks, driver incentives, all the help and support. And my responsibilities also included participating in policy meetings with stakeholders, decision makers, and also I was representing Uber as a spokesperson in Lithuania. First birthday we celebrated already with it as a team of 4, and by the time we had a 2-year party at Uber, After 2 years after launch, we're already 7 people in the team. How did Uber go from this scrappy startup in 2009 to with a simple idea of a simple app to this wildly successful and one of the most valuable startups, peaking at probably about $70 billion of valuation at its high? What I'm going to share with you in the coming 10 minutes or so is my personal story and personal impressions. It's not based on research. I do not represent Uber today. It's all subjective and not endorsed by the company, but I still think that it is going to be useful for you to to maybe give you a recipe of success, if there is any, how to grow your company, and what are the secret ingredients to becoming a big tech, or not even tech startup. This one is about growth and what growth means, something to ponder upon. But growth is something that a lot of startups, a lot of investors talk about, and I think this topic will be touched upon quite a few times today. So the first principle is hire the best. The first key is people. You can have the best idea, vision, and the best in the world idea, actually, but if you cannot gather a talented team to help you implement this idea, it will get nowhere. You probably heard about crazy stories of what kind of crazy questions applicants get, let's say at an application interview at Google and other world-class startups, and they are all selective when it comes to talent they want to hire, and there is a reason for that. For operational roles, Uber hired an outside number of MBAs, former consultants, even investment bankers. But startups actually cannot offer great salaries, and quite a few of those people, they agreed to a lower salary because they were offered exciting challenges, a very interesting job, a fast-paced environment, get shit done attitude, support, and they were motivated by an opportunity to contribute to building something really, really, really big and world-class. So once you get a lot of those talented, smart, and motivated people in the company, collectively, each one of them has an opportunity to grow fast and learn from other members of the team, of this stellar squad. And I did sense this, that I could learn and grow from others and share myself, what I have learned, and that was a fantastic feeling. And of course, stock options help too. Many startups stop giving the options out of their employee stock option pool at some point of their growth, but Uber was an exception and shared that pie that everyone has contributed to, even with those who joined quite late to the game. Another related element is very important in the growth phase. When Uber was launching new cities and new countries at a faster and faster pace, launchers and the city and country managers had a lot of decision power. The system was optimized for speed and growth, and they needed to make fast. They needed to move fast and as fast as possible without waiting for detailed instructions for the headquarters and their input. So those strike teams, they were armed with launch playbooks, perseverance, willingness to scale, and they invented a lot of creative solutions. They did not have to invent the wheel. The business model was already there, but there were still plenty of challenges on the ground in each of the place, and the teams had plenty of autonomy to solve those problems that they were running into. This freedom to create motivates you a lot, and it is one of the ingredients to the secret sauce. And in such conditions, people come up with a lot of amazing creative solutions, such as stunts, from Uber kittens to Uber ice cream and on demand, and all those ideas can be replicated in other cities. But after the growth phase, once the company matures, a lot of those processes were actually unified and centralized to save cost, basically. This one is about empowerment, my favorite Dilbert strip. Probably is not something that you would want to do. So a sneaky, tongue-in-cheek way to look at it, or not do like this. The next element that ties into overall picture is culture and values. And that is not only the rules of the game that are set by the CEO and co-founders, and something that is used in the hiring processes to make sure that you hire the people with the right mindset and that fit your organization. But it is also crucial as a North Star, as an indicator for the decisions that you make. It's also important to know that some of those cultural norms can have a negative side. You most likely have heard of the scandals 3 years ago at Uber, and I think some of the reasons for the bad behavior were related to that the values that encouraged that aggressive growth at any cost, and bending some rules and ethical norms. So you could argue that this mindset of super fast growth was one of the reasons why Uber managed to grow so big and so fast. But at the same time, it unfortunately was very costly to the company in terms of reputation and even market share. So one word of advice would be that make sure that your culture does not become toxic, and you don't sacrifice your company's reputation, and it doesn't suffer. I used to say that Uber is run on 3 things. That's plainly my view. One is data, the other one is Google Sheets, and the third one is a lot of hustle. Well, imagine the amount of data where you capture massive number of data points, or locations, timestamps, distances, prices, and all other features of trips, payments, and interaction during the hundreds of trips happening simultaneously every single second around the world. And that amounts to billions of trips every month. But the biggest question is, what do you actually do with that data that you're sitting on? And what it means for operations is that you can make decisions based on that data. You don't need to argue over those decisions and say, oh, we were going this way or that way because I think so, or I have this hunch, but because, for example, the data on users' behavior shows that this is the right way to go. It's very hard to argue with data. So this is actually how my colleagues' work used to look like a lot. Nowadays, it's of course much more simple than this. You don't have to write your SQL queries yourself anymore, and there are automated dashboards and tools to select the data that you need to make the right decisions. But the importance of data is growing and will only grow in the future. And I would encourage every startup founder to integrate this data gathering and analysis right from the beginning into your product or service. The next point is goals, and every company, every team, every person within that company needs to have a clear and well communicated goals over what they want to achieve overall this year, this quarter, this month, and so on. And if you want your company to grow, to become significant or even a world-class player, those goals need to be ambitious. When the bar is set high, you need to combine all the elements I've already mentioned and the ones that will be mentioned after this: smart, driven, talented people, and the right values, high quality data, and so on, to drive that business forward. How? Well, this is about overachievers and ties back to the people that a lot of tech companies hire. How do you know that you're getting there, that you're making progress towards your goals and objectives? Well, you need to have measurable, preferably numeric, indicators that would demonstrate that the result you have achieved has brought you or is bringing you towards your goal. OKRs, or objectives and key results, is a particularly popular system that is used by many big tech companies. And if you're not using this or similar measurement system yet in your business, I highly recommend that you do that. And the last point for today is that we are coming to work not just to work, but to actually achieve something. This mindset of getting things done is extremely important. And if you want to get somewhere eventually, to wrap up, if you want to grow your company and achieve great things, you need to combine all these factors. Hire the best talents, give them freedom, have the right values and culture, be data-driven in all what you do, internally and externally. Set ambitious goals and measure your progress rigorously towards those goals, and do things that lead you to results. I hope this was helpful. I hope you get these tips into your arsenal and go and make the world a better place. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vytautas, for sharing those useful tips in such a condensed and clearly presented way. I'd like to remind everyone that you can ask questions and you can post them, and we'll happily ask them to the speakers. And now let's move to the second part and to the second session on how do you measure customer lifetime value and how this could be a useful tool for the companies. So I'm pleased to welcome Rokas Šalaševičius, partner at CIVITTA. Rokai, the floor is all yours.
Hello. Okay, hi, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Rokas. I am a partner in CIVITTA. I'm very glad to be in this webinar. I'm very excited to talk about, customer lifetime value. I'm very passionate about this topic. This is the area that, I, work quite a lot in CIVITTA. Basically, we work, and I personally work quite a lot with companies that have a lot of data, and data is very important, as Bitė has mentioned. And basically, we at CIVITTA, we are helping, companies, to analyze that data and to make, better decisions based on that data. And today's topic is about, customer lifetime value. So I would like, to share, some thoughts, why it is important, and maybe, some tricks and advice how to calculate it and how to use it in order to improve business results in your company. So let's start, let's say, with the definitions. Let's see, what is customer lifetime value? In essence, customer lifetime value is the estimate how much money the customer will bring to your company during, their lifetime as a customer. I mean, so this is, sort of, let's say, very simple and, basic definition, but this is something that, many venture capitalists are interested in, that they're always asking, the startups, what is your customer lifetime value? What are your customer acquisition costs? This is actually, extremely, extremely important concept, nowadays. Let's say, and one important, reason is that because customer acquisition costs are very high, therefore we need to know, let's see, what is the lifetime value? Basically, I would say there are two major, let's say, advantages why we should, be measuring customer lifetime value and why we should be, focusing on it. Because understanding customer lifetime value is crucial for startups to achieve profitable growth. And I would like, to emphasize, two things. Yeah, so two reasons why it is important. One is growth hacking. Basically, because we always need to balance customer acquisition costs versus customer lifetime value. Yeah, if you take, many examples, many startups, like, TransferWise, like, Bolt, Uber, maybe some healthcare app, some fitness app, the idea is that probably you will spend a lot of money, let's say, in the beginning, to attract customers. So if you imagine if you take a company like TransferWise, they will spend about, 100 euros, maybe 200 euros to attract, new customers. And their customers are actually, what they're doing. They will make, one or two transactions. I mean, TransferWise, will earn, few euros on those, transactions. And the thing is, for them, it is very, very important how long the customer will stay with them, because they want to understand whether customer lifetime value will be higher than the acquisition costs. Yeah, so I really need to be, very smart. I need to understand what is the cost of acquiring a customer in different channels versus lifetime value of the customers. And this is actually, very, very important, because, if you are basically putting money in the channels that basically do not bring enough value, that customer lifetime value is lower than the acquisition costs. Basically, this is a problem. And this is like a big challenge for many startups, because they spend a lot of money on acquiring customers. But in many instances, customer lifetime value might not be, high enough to justify customer acquisition costs, because these days, let's say, customer acquisition costs are actually, quite high. So that is one thing. We really need to understand the customer lifetime value in order to optimize our, let's say, marketing spending and customer acquisition, channel strategy. Number two, we also need to think about, value preserving, because if you understand customer lifetime value and the levers, let's say, how they impact your customer lifetime value, basically, you would be able to extract, more value from your customers. So maybe in the beginning, maybe you acquired the customers and, their lifetime value is 100 euros, maybe 200 euros. If you focus on the right levers, basically you can also increase the lifetime value of your customers. So this becomes, let's say, very, very important, and let's say for many startups, because sort of one goal is, of course, to attract the customers sort of profitably. And another thing, once you have the customers, how to get, more value from them. So I would say for startups, these are two very important, let's say, factors that you should focus on. And, therefore, customer lifetime value is such an important concept. Now, we go maybe sort of to a more technical part of this presentation, where I would like to discuss how basically, we can calculate, lifetime value. And there are four methods, from, very simple, from the beginning method to advanced. And, I use the martial arts sort of analogy from white belt to black belt, because there are four methods how we can calculate them. And I will try to present all of them. So number one, the first method, which I called, white belt. I mean, very, very simple, sort of the beginner's guide. So this method is based on assumptions that sort of, I know that I acquired a customer, the customer made one transaction, and the value of that transaction is 30 euros. I will make an assumption that my customer will make 5 transactions during his entire lifetime before churning. Therefore, customer lifetime value is calculated 30 times 5 is equal 150 euros. So this is very simple and of course not ideal way to calculate customer lifetime value, but this is like the start. The start. It is better than nothing, but of course not a sufficient way to estimate, lifetime value. We take one transaction and we try to predict how many times the customer will come back. And this is the method how we get 150 euros. So this is method one. Of course, if we want to be, let's say, more professional, method number 2, which I would call blue belt, there is a simple but very useful formula for customer lifetime value calculations. Customer lifetime value is equal revenue per user times margin divided by churn rate. If you want to remember one thing from this presentation, please remember this formula. This is, I would say, very simple but effective, formula. Let's have an example. So suppose I have a customer which has a monthly revenue per user, 10 euros. I know that my profit margin is 80%, monthly churn rate is 5%. I plug these numbers into the formula, and basically I get that customer lifetime value is equal to 160 euros. So this is, very cool, because once I know this formula, I can actually, start tracking my KPIs and customer lifetime value over time. So suppose that basically I'm measuring, my ARPU, which is basically, I see that it is increasing, let's say over the last 2 years from 13 euros to 14 euros. I'm measuring, gross margin, which basically goes from 70% to 77%. Churn rate, which sort of fluctuates between 6 and 7% per month. I plug these things, these numbers into a formula, and I'm basically saying that yes, customer lifetime value, 150, 160, today it's about 170 euros. And actually, I can see, how customer lifetime value is trending over time. Yes, by using the simple, formula that customer lifetime value is equal ARPU times gross margin divided by churn rate. Again, very, very simple but effective formula. I mean, I think, a good starting, way to analyze your customer base. I'm repeating, this formula again, because it is super, super important. And sort of once the thing is, I mean, once you know this formula, you can also, let's say, start making, different, analysis. What is better? Is it better to have, let's say, a customer which has, 10 euros ARPU and, 5% churn rate, or maybe 7 euros ARPU and, 3% churn rate? Basically, you plug the numbers into the formula and you get the answer. Is it better for you to offer a discount to customers, which basically you are giving up some revenue, but you are expecting that the loyalty of these customers will increase, therefore probably that you will earn, more money from this customer in the long run? Again, very, very useful formula. Now, the problem with this formula, and this is where it is limitation of this, method number 2, blue belt level, is that this churn rate, which sort of is, we think, hey, our churn rate is 5%, 6%. Churn rate is actually dependent on the maturity of the customer base. And this is, what I want to show. Basically, if you look here in this, slide on the left-hand side, this is a typical behavior of your customer base. If you acquired, 1,000 customers today, and if you measured their performance over time, basically you will see a couple of things. That in the beginning, churn rate will be, very high. After first month, you might be losing, 50%, 40%, or 60% of your customers. And once you get rid of those, high-risk customers, then the churn rate might stabilize to 2-3%, per month. And actually, this behavior of customers, the churn rate is very, very high in the beginning, but then it becomes much lower at later stages in their life. This is typical for, I would say, all the industries that we worked. I mean, if you take a telecom operator, you will see a churn rate like this. I mean, take a bank, you will see a a customer, profile like this. You take an Uber, TransferWise, I mean, you will also see, or any app, probably you will see, very, very similar behavior. If you haven't done this analysis, I would encourage to do it, for your customers. You will see, something very similar. So what does it mean, let's say, for the customer lifetime value? That basically, if we only, if we want to talk technically, customer lifetime value is the sum of the revenue or profit area below this curve. Yeah, so this sort of tells us that there are basically, two steps how we should basically calculate customer lifetime value. First of all, you need to observe your customers. Let's say over time, basically you need to do a cohorts-based analysis. You observe 1,000 customers that you acquired, 1 year ago, and you track how many of them survived, how much money they have actually, given to you. And this is, let's say, the first section here, what is called actual spend. And then you need to calculate how much money they brought during, the first year. And then basically what you need to do, you need to predict, what will happen to these customers in the future. And basically, and then your customer lifetime value will be a sum of these two areas, the actual spend over, the first 12 months period, and then the predicted, spend over, the remaining, lifetime. And also, if you want to be, very specific, yeah, if you are sort of, let's say this finance guy, you can also, let's say, discount the cash flows, because in a way, customer lifetime value, you could say, is the discounted cash flows that this customer will bring us over time. Yeah. So anyway, so this is like a cohort-based method, is very, very cool, and I would say a more correct way to estimate customer lifetime value. You can use these cohorts, let's say, for different, customer segments. So like in this example, we have 3 customer segments. In this middle graph, segment 1, segment 2, segment 3, and this is, by the way, a very, I would say, a real case. We see 3 segments. We see, let's say, the behavior of customers, how they're churning over time. All of 3 segments, basically, they had a very high churn rate in the beginning, then the churn rate is stabilizing. So we are calculating, how much they have spent historically, for the first, 3 months. And then we are making, some predictions, how much they will bring us value in the future. So in this example, segment 1 will be worth 179 euros. Segment 2 will be worth 339 euros. Segment 3 will be worth 248 euros. So this is a cohorts-based approach that basically we observe a cohort of 1,000 customers. We see how much value they have brought maybe during the first year, and then we make, some predictions about that cohort. And then basically this gives an estimate how much money, let's say, this customer is worth overall. Now, so this is like a correct way. This is a correct way to estimate customer lifetime value. The problem, let's say, with this method is that it only gives you like a customer lifetime value estimation for a group of customers. Let's say for that 1,000 cohort of 1,000 customers. And basically, if you take this example, if you take this segment where you think that, hey, this customer is worth 179 euros, within that segment, within that cohort, there will be customers that are worth only 20 or 30 euros. And there will be customers that might be worth 1,000 euros. And this is a problem, but let's say we are all putting like on average that 1,000 customers is worth 179. But within, when you look individually, there will be like a big disparity, what is basically, how much these customers are worth. Now, this brings us to the fourth method. Fourth method, it is what is called Father Hardy method. And of course, I mean, you can also, let's say, augment it with machine learning, techniques, but there is a method that enables us to calculate customer lifetime value for each individual customer. There are some very, scary and advanced formulas how to do that. I basically, don't want to go into detail, but more or less the idea is that there is a method that will enable us to understand what is the lifetime value of each particular customer. Let me demonstrate with some example. Let's see what is happening. So suppose we had a customer who came in July 2017, and what we observe is basically, I mean, he made 2 transactions, he spent totally about 22 euros. So on average, he's spending, 11 euros. So based on these, I mean, if you know, let's say, how to do it, and you have another, let's say, 10,000 customers, and more or less, how they're behaving, even based on these two transactions, you already, can predict, what will happen to this customer in the future. So there are methods who are giving you predicted value. So for example, the Spotter-Hardy method will give you that this particular customer, that basically there is 95% probability that he's alive, that he will make 80 transactions in the future. On average, he will spend a little bit less than 11 euros. So his expected future lifetime value is 875 euros, and total lifetime value is about, 900 euros. Now, so this is, after, month one, and then you can make these, let's say, calculations, over time. So if you go, let's say, next month or the other months, you can always, see, how many transactions they're making, how much money they have spent historically, and then you can recalculate these, probabilities and future transactions for each customer. So for example, let's focus on this customer, yeah? So in the beginning, we saw that, hey, there is whenever we make these calculations, yes, this customer, 95% probability that he's alive. Next month, 94, 97%, 96. And I go to January 2018, I see that something wrong is happening with customer because there is only, 14% probability that this customer is alive. His expected future transactions is only 15. And I saw that before it was, 67 or maybe even 100, that his expected, value per one transaction is about, 5 euros, and his future value is 70 euros. And I saw that before that, basically it was like a 500 or 600, euros, value customer. And, overall 160, euros this customer is worth. Whereas, in the previous months, I was expecting, 500 or 600 or even, more euros for this customer. And then, of course, you can track, what happened later. Maybe you did, some actions and you revived this customer. And again, this was like almost a lost customer with 14% probability of being alive. You initiated some marketing activities, and next month already he becomes alive with 98% probability of alive. And his customer lifetime value jumps from 160 euros to 566 euros. So in a way, this becomes like a very, very cool method. Yes, because if you have a tool that is able for you to predict lifetime value for each particular customer, then it becomes like very, very powerful tool for you to manage your customers and ask questions. Yes, because you can always, be measuring like even daily, weekly, or monthly customer lifetime value and asking these questions. I saw that, last month, this customer was worth 466 looking forward in the future, but this month only 72. What happened? Of course, the main reason, why this is happening, that probability of this customer being alive has dropped significantly. So basically, he has a very high churn risk. And as we know, if the customer has a churn risk, of course, decreases, very significantly lifetime value of a customer. And then basically we can say, okay, if I know this, I need maybe to design, some action. I need to design a campaign to revive this customer. And I can even afford, because I know that, now this customer is only worth 72 euros. And my objective is to bring him back to 500 euros. So I can even afford for this particular customer to give maybe a big gift, like, hey, please come back. Maybe this is an Uber customer. Not only like send him like a simple reminder, please use Uber back, but maybe you can even say, hey, here is 20 euros for you for free. You can use Uber, in the future, because sort of you see that the value, if you manage to revive this customer, you will bring that value back to 500. So if you do it properly, this becomes sort of a very, very useful way to manage your customer base. So again, this is a summary. Let's say there are 4 methods how to calculate customer lifetime value from white belt to black belt. As a minimum, I would suggest to use, method number 2, blue belt. This customer lifetime value is equal to ARPU times gross margin times churn divided by churn rate. You will already, be, if you use this formula, you will be better than, at least, 60% of the companies or 70% of the companies who are probably even not using this method. Of course, if you want even better results, you may use this, Father Hardy method. If you want, to try it, CIVITTA, we have this tool, and for the participants of this webinar, we invite you, to use this tool even, for free as a trial version. Please contact us. We will help you. But I think, customer lifetime value is extremely important concept. It helps you both optimize customer acquisition, versus, strategies, and also helps you to increase the value of the customers once you have it. That's it from my side. If you have any questions, please post them, and I will be very happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, Rokas. We've looked into some of the key principles on how to structure growth in the company. We then turn to data to see how we can use data to boost growth. And now we're going to get practical. So for the next session, we're going to speak to a number of entrepreneurs who have experience at the most prestigious accelerators in the world. And we will try to drill them for details, how they got into those accelerators, what you can expect there, and in general, how you can bring that experience back home and maybe use it to advise other local accelerators, or give advice to the government on what else they could do to support early stage companies. So I'm super pleased to present our distinguished panel today. I'm very grateful for the time that they could dedicate to us. So please welcome Paulius or Paul Veželis, the head of Traxlo, who will share his experience at Antler Stockholm. Paul, welcome and happy to have you here.
Hello, happy to be here and happy to answer all the questions in short time.
Also, please welcome Hedi Bardisa, who is the CEO and co-founder of Cache. And Hedi will share her experience at Kickstart London. Hello.
Hi, very nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Glad to have you. Also, please welcome Edmundas Edi Balčikonis, co-founder and CEO of Edi Travels, who will share his experience at Kickstart Toronto. Edi, are you here? Okay, let's give maybe a few more minutes for Edi to join. And do we have Viktoras here with us? Not yet. We are actually starting a bit early, but I'll just briefly introduce them. So Edmundas, probably all of you already know, and Viktoras Jusikas, he's a CTO at Genius AI, who has experience at FinTech Innovation Lab in New York. He has also experience in multiple other accelerators, both in Startup Bootcamp in London and also at StartX in California, but we'll mostly be talking about FinTech Innovation Lab. I see that Viktoras is here. Hi, Viktoras. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for hosting.
So once again, I'd like to remind everyone that you're welcome to post messages and welcome to ask questions. We'll go through the discussion and we'll be asking questions at the end of the discussion, but you're very welcome to join. And in case there are some burning questions that we do not cover, then we'll gladly cover them at the end of the session. We have a couple of more minutes before the official starts of this session. And Marius, can we see the general slide with the speakers? All right, so let's start and let's travel. So first of all, I'd like to maybe do a short round of introductions and ask everyone to briefly present what your company does and how did you end up in the particular accelerator. Paul, maybe we can start with you. I'll ask you each by name so we know who should speak.
Yeah, so probably I'll start from the second question, how we ended up at the accelerator, because Antler Accelerator starts before the company or even idea starts. So Accelerator works as they accept participants from all around the world. Now we have, I believe, 14 locations, and I applied to the Stockholm cohort. And they select 50 technology people, like programmers, scientists, or something like that, and 50 more like business development, CEO type of people. So I was of the business development side, and I just applied as a person. Of course, they evaluate my background, everything what I did before, and what I strive to do in the future. But basically, they like that. Application starts very simply. You just paste the LinkedIn URL to the online form, and that's it. You might hear from them back or not. And the same my co-founder did. So he also applied. He is the CTO of our company, and he is also actually a Lithuanian guy. So we went to Stockholm, to Lithuanians to meet. And and then we started the company. And the company now is working to optimize warehouse operations and retail shop floor operations across the North Europe.
Perfect, thank you. Hedy, maybe we can turn to you. Can you briefly introduce what your company does and how you ended at Kickstart London?
Okay, I'll start from the company side. Then Cache is a financial services marketplace for gig workers. So we basically aggregate and enrich cross-market data from different gig platforms like Uber and Bolt, etc., in order to enable the insurance companies to sell better priced and much more personalized cover for which will be depending on kind of the gig workers' real working hours. So in a way, if Uber driver who drives 1 hour a day, there are many of those, then he doesn't need to pay a full taxi insurance compared with the one that provides service, I don't know, 40, 50 hours a week. So that's kind of the initial logic of that. So we bring together cross-market data from the full market and from different competitors, and then I have a single point of customer via that provide smart, much more personalized services. So that's what we do. We had the company already working exactly almost a year. So we had a really funny occasion where actually we had the meeting with the Techstars, first meeting with the Techstars in Estonia the day we launched our product. So you can obviously imagine that meeting with them at that point wasn't our first priority. So they were super impressed that we actually showed up, and I think that's how we kind of ended up to the world flow. And the next thing we noticed was actually we were moving to London. So
that's fantastic, and we'll be digging more into that. How do you think you got in, and what were the key things that you think made you special and stand out from the rest of the applicants? Hedy, welcome. We've briefly introduced all the speakers, but please, if there's anyone who doesn't know, present what Hedy Travels does and how did you end up in Kickstart Toronto?
Hi, everyone. My name is Edmundas. I'm co-founder and CEO of Hedy Travels. We help people find great hotel deals and flights. And you can do it on our chat or on Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, and a number of other chat applications. So it's an AI assistant powered by machine learning, natural language processing, and all that other good stuff. And we got into Kickstart Toronto because of lots of luck. There were a few chatbot AI companies doing really well in Canada, and Kickstart Toronto founders were aware of them and apparently tried to invest in them but didn't get in. And we applied very aggressively. I probably got 20 recommendations, introductions with managers. So at least 5 of them were really useful. One of them was done by Victor's former colleague in the Up Summit, for example, also. I don't think I asked for that one, but it was great that your co-founder supported us. And the managing director of Kickstart Toronto really liked that we were aggressive. reaching out, showing that we want to get in, and the travel industry in 2018 and 19 were on just like a constant way up. There were record years of investments in travel industry. There were record for everything. So it was also good timing, and because of those other companies and so on, that's how we got lucky.
Fantastic. And I love the, how neat your one-liner about the company is. You can say that you've been practicing it a lot, and it's a very clear presentation of the company. So Viktoras, now let's turn to you. Tell us a bit about Genius AI, what you do, and how you ended up at FinTech Innovation Lab.
Thank you, Jürgen. Thank you again, for hosting and inviting. Pleasure to be here and share a bit of an experience we had with a variety of accelerators. So I'm a CTO at Genius AI, based in Vilnius right now. Needless to say, Genius AI is certainly the best and the most interesting company in AI sector, at the very least in Lithuania, if not in Europe, probably in the world. What we do is that we help brands to understand and engage with their customers in an emotional, intelligent way. And the result of that, they optimize their growth, increase engagement, and manage retention. So we work primarily with brands, direct-to-consumer brands based in the United States, and hence all the accelerators are primarily states-based. The way we are set up is that we have an engineering and machine learning team with the top talent here in Vilnius and the sales office in San Francisco. The client base is primarily in the States, other than a couple of clients, basically. So we participated in FinTech Innovation Lab in New York. They run two programs, one in New York, another one in London. So maybe kind of that one is kind of closer to home. We ended up in a New York one, we ended up, doing that with a lot of kind of directed effort. So initially, the introduction was a little bit random. I think it came via one of our investors, but we had this very clear goal that we wanted to figure out, whether a product like ours would be useful, could be used in a more enterprise financial retail setting. And we happen to have quite a few investors from insurance space. We made a connection. We worked with a couple of insurance companies, and ended up there. So it was a elaborate process, right? And the approach I like to take to those things, as with many other things in life, is go big or go home. So focused effort, a lot of work, and that's kind of how you do it. Another one. And I can chat a little bit about that a bit later in more detail. But another interesting one, I guess, is or two interesting ones are Startup Bootcamp in London. So also similar profile, focused on InsurTech, but very differently organized than the FinTech Innovation Lab, and StartX, which is supposedly Stanford Network Accelerator. As in, like, you have to have someone from Stanford, and I have still no idea what Tadas did, the founder and the CEO of the company, so that we got in there, because we have absolutely zero. Well, clearly we have something to do with Stanford, so that we successfully got in there and had a very good run.
All right, thanks for the short intro. And I'm really pleased that we have such a mix of different verticals presented. We have a mix of products that target both B2B and B2C. There are B2B and B2C kind of products, and also that cover a variety of geographies. So, there's no one solution, or there's no one vertical overrepresented. And it's interesting to see how, we can watch the journeys of different products. So let's look at more deeply into this process of getting into that accelerator. And I'm pretty sure that you get asked this gazillion of times. How did they select you? You all kind of briefly touched upon that process, but let's go into what that process looked like and what you think made you stand out. Maybe what's the feedback that you got after you got in, and what's the advice that then you give to others who are also looking to join those world-known accelerators? So maybe Viktoras, let's now go backwards. Let's start with you. Can you share what you think, and maybe what you were told were the key criteria why they selected you? And I think important thing to mention is also that I think you're all serial entrepreneurs. So you all had a few companies, and I thought that that's also something that you all have in common.
All right. So maybe very briefly, I think as I just mentioned before, it has to be a focused effort, and that kind of focused effort has to stem from essentially like why do you think you want to kind of get in there? Like what is it that you will get out of it? So I think that is certainly the first part worth thinking about, like why do you want to get into this specific accelerator? And once you know the reason, why, and again, to give an example of FinTech Innovation Lab, I had a bunch of conversations with people who have kind of gone through it. So figured out, what it is about, how does it work, what are the commitments, and still kind of underestimated and overestimated a couple of things. But then once you do that, there's, obviously application process. In the FinTech Innovation Lab's case, it is a somewhat different from, Techstars or YC or others. They almost take no equity, and the whole thing is funded by top financial institutions in the States. And since kind of New York is a finance capital of the world, some people say, they all based in there. And the whole kind of spiel there is like, well, why do we need to look for innovation in the Bay Area? Why are we not kind of building out this innovation in New York? So everyone from Goldman to BlackRock to biggest insurance companies, Transamerica's of the world, they kind of pulled together, created a fund, a bit of a management, and part of that fund exercise is to build out kind of technology and support technology and innovation in New York. So the way the application process then that reflects an application process is that what the company does should somewhat be beneficial, either to New York or B to those kind of financial institutions, or both. So in our case, since we did work quite a bit with in the financial sector, we have a couple of clients. I have a little bit of experience working in the financial sector, in a previous life. So that did certainly help us navigate the whole thing, and we were kind of on topic for that accelerator, right? So I think that is kind of key. And then in terms of what we want to get out of it was, well, okay, we want to be able to understand how to sell and how to sign large corporates, and what does it take to do that. And obviously, as all of you know, signing up different businesses, different size entities is a very different exercise. In finance, everyone is super regulated. All the AI solutions, like for example ours, need certain access to certain data that is also super regulated. So what does it take to do that and to go through all the loops and hoops? So what that meant in the reality was that we were a team of 6 back a little bit over a year ago, and now we're a team of 23, 24. We had to fly over from London and San Francisco, where we were based at the time, to New York, go through a really decently rigorous interviewing process with actually all these banks, and do then some sort of like a pitch demo day where it's banks and journalists and God knows whoever else. So it was a bit of an effort. And then out of that, so that kind of that's post the application form where they filter out a lot of applicants. And then after that, we got basically accepted. So that was a pretty rigorous exercise and involved a lot of flying pre-COVID times.
So you mentioned that investors also kind of referred you, and I presume gave you references as well. How big a part do you think that played in the whole process? Did that only help in the initial process, and then you kind of had to prove yourself?
I think it's one of those things where it's both luck and skill, and luck is an element in the sense that maybe you get an introduction because some of our investors are based in New York. So they know that this program exists. So we ended up, visiting them, and they say, "Hey, look, like there's this interesting program." So next thing, you know, a couple of days after, we're visiting the kind of the head of that program, saying hi and trying to understand more about that program, and then kind of visiting people in London who participated in that program, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the fact that we learned about it was a bit of a kind of luck. But other than that, then I don't think there were kind of any recommendations from investors. Obviously, like top places, they're not looking for investor recommendations. They're looking, for example, for client references, case studies. Does it work? Does it actually do what it says on the tin? So that type of thing is obviously important.
Was there anything particular about the interview process or about the demo day where you felt that your personal qualities were tested, and any kind of tips on how to prepare for that?
You know, it's American Accelerators, so Americans are very good at pitching and at presentation. So that is what you really need to polish. We did quite a bit of that kind of pre-going there, and then kind of pitching to kind of the panel of those banks in this kind of final selection round. And obviously, then they did spend a lot of effort working with us to prepare us for the demo day. So obviously, two different processes, kind of pre-getting in there, and then once you get in there, there's a lot of effort in helping us how to present things, how to present what we're doing, what do we kind of present out of the learnings we've done over these 3 months with the participating institutions and, you know, banks and insurance companies. So there was a lot of work put in there from their side and obviously our side. In terms of specific tips, I think you know, like I think one specific tip is basically making sure, you know, what Edmundas just did very well on the introduction, is to be very, very specific and very, very clear what you do and how you describe what you do. So that has to be like super, super simple. And you know, when you are doing your business 24/7, it's very easy to get bogged into details, and very easy to, you know, the narrative gets very complex very quickly. However, when you're actually doing elevator pitch, it's the opposite of what you want, right? It has to be super simple. So that's one. And then obviously that comes together with like, well, what is the vision that you are projecting? So you want to kind of think a lot about that. So then I talk to companies and founders here in Lithuania. I always say, look, you know, what is important when you are actually, you know, pitching to investors or accelerators is basically your vision, your team, and traction you have. And ultimately, these are the three components. And I think, again, in Lithuania, I would say vision is always the weakest link of all the three. And obviously, then out of that comes like, how do you present it? I would double down, triple down on vision and presenting your business.
Yeah, and I think in particular, we struggle as Europeans when faced with the American market, that they tend to really exaggerate and draw that vision, and that's something that a lot of the times European companies fail to do, at least as effectively. So thanks. I have a million other questions, but let's travel to Toronto. Edmundas, you mentioned perseverance, and I think it's very evident in your case. Walk us a bit through that process. I think a lot of the times you might feel, oh, are we on the line of becoming too annoying? How important do you think is, you know, messaging the people, connecting to the people, expanding that network? Talk us a bit through that process and how it looked like.
Well, if you answer questions why you're doing this, as Viktoras was talking about, you know, like why are you applying and why they should accept you, you should have a clear, logical explanation why you're trying to reach out, and if it's useful for them to accept you, if you should get into the program and it's easy to explain, then it's not annoying. You're bringing valuable information for them. You're bringing up the details that are important for their decision making into which companies to invest. So that also, of course, depends on the person. Luckily, in our case, in Kickstart Toronto, Managing Director Sunil Sharma is a great guy, very open and communicative, and he's open. He likes to see the hustle and effort from the founder side too. So he wants to see that you want to get into the program, and he wants to know why. So in that case, it worked out really well. We also applied to other Techstars programs where it worked out well. I've also encountered cases where it doesn't work well. So then you have to just adjust your style to the person who might be more introverted and focused on technology. And in my case, I would just put our CTO forward to explain machine learnings and infrastructure and whatever else would be relevant. So you do have to adjust your tactics, how you're reaching out. On the other hand, like, it's always better to ask for excuse than not to try, because if you don't try, you're not gonna know if it was annoying or not. So usually in Lithuania and Northeast Europe, we're more shy than not. So I would say just go for it and then see what happens. Worst case scenario, you get to apply to another program.
And how did that process look? For application, interviews, multiple interviews? It's quite a small batch, isn't it? It's about 10 companies per batch.
Yes, Techstars only do up to 10 companies per batch. Sometimes they do less. So Techstars have a really, because it's such a huge program, 50 or 60 locations around the world, multiple corporate partners. So they have really fleshed out the process, and you apply through f6s.com platform, f6 as a number s.com. That's where you can find all the Techstars accelerators. Of course, you can find all of them on the Techstars website, which will lead to F6S application form. The good thing with Techstars is that they all have the same application form. So you can reuse a lot of content. However, if you're applying to multiple locations, again, like why are you applying to them specifically? That should be mentioned in the form, and the answers should be adjusted. So we applied to Techstars programs that had travel or travel mentors, and in the end, there were top 3, top 4 maybe programs that had something related to travel, and that's where we applied. The interviewing process of Techstars Toronto was also the most intense. We had, I don't know, definitely over 10 calls just with Sunil before the official interviews. So, and then of course there were 2 or 3 official interviews. For each of them, I prepared anew or updated all the decks, added answers to previously received questions. It was quite an intense process, and of course I was doing that for a few programs. So just like with fundraising, you have to prepare to invest a lot of time, and you have to prepare before applying. You have to put in work while you're applying and talking with them.
Oh, that sounds really intense. And any kind of tips or how you prepared yourself? Did you use some help? I mean, you are kind of pioneers here as well. Did you have anyone to talk to prepare for those questions and to know what to expect?
I wouldn't call us pioneers, I have a lot of friends and acquaintances who have been into Techstars. There were companies in Lithuania that were in different Techstars programs in Berlin and so on. So yeah, I got help from them. I talked to the investors in Lithuania. I talked to investors when in our parts of the world. I practiced a lot with a deck. I would sit down my co-founders and practice in front of them. I would record myself and I mean, yeah, everything from research to recording myself to doing presentations for other people, asking advice for investors and companies that have been into Techstars.
Well, practice. Hedy, let's turn to you. Also experience with Techstars, but in London. Tell us a bit, what do you think made you stand out for all the applicants, and was your process similar?
I think from our side, actually, I'm just smiling a bit here because our kind of experience was a bit different. If I hear Edmundas's experience, so first of all, we applied. We were actually invited to the interview. So someone, I actually so far even don't know who was the one that referred us that they should meet us. So they contacted us and told that they are in Estonia and would you like to come and meet? And I was thinking, well, despite of the launch day, if Techstars invites you to meet, then it would be polite to go. So we did. So I did. We actually, when I went alone because my co-founder was handling some of the launch-related small topics. So yeah, we ended up actually thinking a long time if we want to apply or not. They actually convinced us quite a bit. So we did, and about all that, there was lots of interviews. There was also a corporate partner involved. So we went to the Techstars London, which the fintech version, with a support from Barclays Bank, which fitted us obviously perfectly because we are an insurtech company, and this was clearly, London was clearly around the most interesting place at all where we would potentially want to go. So yeah, and we had, everything was completely in that sense wrong in this process. We had both booked on holiday because we were working hard. So some of the interviews we did we had to do a common interview. We were in the same place. So we actually tried to hack together somewhere via Skype and it failed badly. So we had funny vacation interviews there with some videos and everything. But what I think worked well for us was we have a very, very good product in that sense. We are solving a real problem, which is a very actual problem also also for them in London. And InsurTech was definitely interesting for them. And definitely what we got probably the most feedback, we weren't again anyway typical startup in that sense that you have a very strong business leader and very strong tech leader. We weren't that. So we are, in that sense, my background goes, I've been many years in the banking and IT in that sense, but I'm not a developer myself. So more in that sense, business and kind of communication side. And my co-founder is we're laughing, but probably the first person in the world that stepped out of actively being a member of Estonian parliament to actually found a startup. So a completely, in that sense, very, very different setup. But he was also the guy who built the kind of first ever regulation, which was then enacted in Estonia, and now has been pretty similar, copied to quite many countries in the EU around for the gig economy and especially for their kind of ride-hailing platforms. So we had a very strong regulatory kind of knowledge in our team, and then from my side, the financial and IT side. So very, very kind of strong team, very clear problem that we wanted to solve, and also we had already a solid product in the market, and then also partnership with very strong platforms like Uber and Bolt and the Ernst taxi. So I think that was the kind of key what probably made us stand out. But the rest is fairly similar. There was lots of interviews. We also had to travel to London at one point to actually meet lots of people in the bank, and I had a fairly kind of how to say typical big room in investor kind of panel where we had to present. So yeah.
All right, thanks for sharing. Paulus, now let's turn to you, and you have a bit of a kind of different maybe setup of an accelerator. You all apply individually. So what's the process of applying to answer? Is it similar? And what do you think were the key things that made them choose you?
All right. So it's totally different from all of the experience shared before. And I wouldn't say that the getting in is like the main thing. Of course, you have to get in to be in the program. But the main goal of all the program is to get the pre-seed investment after 2 months of acceleration. And then you calculate all the probabilities. So first of all, we select 100 people out of around 4,000 per cohort. And then out of this 100, there are like 47 teams who are formed during these 2 months. And out of 37 teams, in our case, only 7 teams got the pre-seed investment. So all of this stuff, hustling, as Edmund has mentioned, and introductions and knowing whom to talk to and what to do, starts when you arrive at Stockholm. So initial steps to get to the Stockholm or to any other location is pretty straightforward. So as I mentioned, you just paste your LinkedIn address and they contact you maybe. And if they contact, then standard like job interview type of thing starts. I believe I had like 3 calls with different level of people, and in the middle I had IQ tests or logic tests, something in that regard to be completed. So after that, so maybe just to finish about the initial part. So they have this thesis, and Antler itself is like a startup compared to other accelerators or early stage VCs, because we are only 3 months, 3 years old and pretty fresh. So their founder is ex-Navy SEAL, and he has this thesis that failure is not an option, and that's it. Basically, you just cannot fail. If you become Antler family part, you have to perform. And they're looking for this failure is not an option during all the interviews beforehand. And this is what you have to basically show during these 2 months in Stockholm. And in Stockholm, it's an interesting program because basically 2 weeks you get to understand or to get on the similar level with all the people. What is the startup? How does it work? And to learn basic stuff. And then you have like 6 weeks to build something, to show traction, to get your first customers and to get your first deals, even if you're able to do that. And then this is the part where all this failure is not an option comes into light. And the funny thing was for us that the very end of the program, the COVID was in full speed basically, and all countries were locking down. So we came back to Lithuania from Stockholm, and we had all our final phase of like pitching investors, doing the internal demo days, and having a lot of conversations also to get this pre-seed totally online. So that was interesting turnout, not expected, but yes, still you have to find the ways to show how you're different, what you will do, what you have done. And when we made fun of it, that when you put 100 of already somewhat successful and highly motivated individuals in one room, and it was actually, I don't know, maybe like 400 square meters of WeWork private place. So a lot of things happen, and dramas and backstabbing in some cases even. So this is like a big boot camp for startups, but definitely a fun experience.
Yes, absolutely. When we were preparing for this discussion, I really loved how you explained what that whole experience meant to you as a team, and also what you think was the greatest value. So we talked a bit about how do we get in, but what is it that we gain out of these accelerators? So can you elaborate a bit on why it was important for you as a team? And also, what do you think are the other advantages of Antler?
So Antler is positioning itself probably more like for already experienced people, but in domain knowledges in some industries and technologies, but not in the startup environment itself. And I believe what really helps, because the startup world is definitely unique compared to older industries, slower industries. And when you come to like this crazy boot camp for 2 months to live basically in very close proximity, even sometimes with other founders, and you're competing each other, and you get all these lessons from seasoned startups from across the globe, you kind of get your whole team, your co-founder, on the same page to understand what is expected of you, what is expected from the startup, at what speed everything is moving and should move later on. So I believe this creates a very good base to later on to build the company, because you both went through the same experience, you bonded together, you know you have the same expectations, and some cases we've seen from friends in Lithuania when one person in the team is from the startup environment and the other is totally from like traditional industry, and the expectations are different. How we work is different. I believe that's why these like very early stage accelerators bring benefit to shape the team in the needed mindset. So I believe that's valuable, really.
Great. And except in addition to bringing your team kind of to the same understanding and to the same mindset, what was maybe external benefits of being part of Antler? Maybe they are still materializing. Yeah,
so I believe the true benefit of Antler just starts to come in the light, basically, because now we are part of an alumni group. And this is huge. Of course, it's still not at the level of Techstars, but at the pace it is growing, I believe we will equalize pretty soon. And now we are able to tap into experiences across like 14 different markets and in all the regions of the world. And the partners of each local branch, they all share basically some, they are part of the same fund. And if one part of the fund succeeds, other part of the funds also get some benefits and monetary also. So we can go to London, we can go to New York, we can go to Sydney office and ask for some concrete help, and they have incentive to provide it. And we have a local networks, we have a local mentors, we have a local connections, and I believe that is truly beneficial. And when we form like mentoring teams, mentors select mentors for you, so it is from the start, from the get-go, it's totally global. We can get the retail or logistic industry experts who are at the top of their domain, doesn't matter which country, and we can get their experience while being like thousands of kilometers away. So I believe the benefit of a global program is of its huge network potential, mainly, or that's the big part.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing for this frank account of your experience there. Edmundas, maybe let's turn to you. Did you find the same benefits? Was it as intense? Did it require as much kind of effort and energy from your team, or was your experience different?
Yeah, it was quite intense time. So, well, in general, firstly, I have to explain that before Techstars, our team basically just formed. So when we got accepted to the Techstars program, we were literally just founders. And by the time we had to fly to, so 2 months later, by the time we had to fly to Toronto, we were already 6. 5 of us went to the program, and yeah, it's a newly formed team. Very fresh product of lots of issues in very early stage, and on top of that, the program is basically geared for preparing you for raising seed round, just like Paul mentioned. So it was mostly intense for us founders. It was a bit less for the colleagues that just joined us. But even for them, it was a new world, coming as developers to, a really big startup community in Toronto, new country, new city, English, everything is in English, of course. And then on top of that, they had all kinds of activities they had to build the product, and they had all kinds of activities in the program. It was probably the most intense as a program for me and our CMO, just because the program is geared towards fundraising. So most of the mentors are investors or angels, investors from funds or angel investors. There are these crazy Techstars mentor madness days, where during one day, sometimes you do 20 pitches, and you go to meetings one after another for 20 minutes. You're pitching one investor, straight away you go to another meeting, and so on. So it's called mentor madness. It's quite exhausting, On the other hand, it worked out for us. So we crystallized our pitch and what we're trying to what we were trying to explain, our vision, where travel industry is going, where we can see that we can help with an AI assistant in this huge industry, and we raised from 2 angels during the program and a couple more after the program, and then finally raised from my previous investors, Practica Capital and then Open Circle Capital later in the year. So yeah, program is intense. Have to be ready for it. Most of the time, we'll probably, at least in Techstars, will be required from the CEO or whoever of the founders will be fundraising.
Thanks. Hedy, maybe let's turn to you. What do you think was the biggest value for you from Techstars London?
So yeah, definitely agreeing with Edmundas. Mentor Madness was fairly maddening, but it was definitely also the most valuable part as well. We went in very strongly with a focus really to actually build the network. So that was, we didn't go there with a full kind of goal to change the product so tremendously. It was more like really get the support, get the help, get the knowledge, get the context to help us scale quickly throughout Europe. So we also were the team that actually, or the kind of cohort that had to go virtual and meet away. So we were lucky enough to do the Mentor Madness and a few other weeks before we went fully virtual. So it was an interesting shift in that sense. But what were the biggest values? And exactly what was said, same thing. It's the same concept of Mentor Madness. You have days full of meetings. We also had the kind of partner, partly bigger kind of mentor pool to go through. So I think altogether probably 140 plus 150 with 1 month that you have to meet. But I think that the kind of the key part wasn't really the meetings. The key part was actually the whole concept of trying to work through who are the people you are meeting, trying to prepare for the meeting, trying to actually really get the connection, get the right questions. And I think that applies for everybody. Everybody's nodding for the mentor kind of meetings, and really actually wrapping up afterwards and really closing to actually continue the dialogue and make it sustainable. So I think the whole process of how to then manage this 150 people who you will send an email, send back an email and start the overall dialogue of things, and you are 1 and 2 persons. So I think this one eventually was one of the very, very strong learning points for all of us. And as I, as a kind of, I don't know, stereotypical now Estonian, so it's super hard to ask help in that sense. So how can you ask, you know, if I want to be introduced to Elon Musk, I probably know in the network there's probably 100,000 people who might know Elon Musk, but why would they introduce me to him? So I need to really understand how to ask the question. So someone who knows Elon Musk would feel convenient and kind of proud and happy to introduce a founder from Estonia, from small insurtech company to, for example, him. So how can you prepare your ask so that other person? This was definitely one of the very important learning point for me, and something good to kind of keep going. So I remember actually waking up in the middle of the night and thinking about some asks. So throughout the very intense time there, and maybe just comment about the team. We also, we were 2 co-founders full time there. And then that was the kind of good thing of being in Europe. So we brought in week after week also other teammates until we all went virtual. So that was in that sense worked very well and was very motivating for all the parties. So.
It's interesting. I think that you mentioned ask. I think it's something very difficult psychologically for us to do. And I actually remember from another session also talking to an Estonian entrepreneur who was advised, she was asked, what is the highest price that, you know, what you think would be an outrageous price to ask for your product? And then the mentor said, well, go and ask it. And she said she thought she was going to, you know, disappear into the ground, but then they agreed to pay it. And she was so shocked. So yeah, I can definitely relate to that from everyone else's stories. Victor, you've had experience, and quite a lot of experience, living abroad, living in the UK, funding another global company. Did you find the experience at the accelerator as intense and as grueling, or maybe it wasn't as difficult for you?
In our experience, we had only 6 people basically at the time for FinTech Innovation Lab, specifically speaking. So the way it also works is not unlike Techstars, for example. Like, you need to be physically present there, and there basically means New York. And out of the 6 people, the founder and the CEO, just got a baby daughter, as in like literally she was born during the the program. So he was literally out. Paternity is important, at least for a couple of weeks. And so I ended up kind of taking the majority of the effort. So really the way it worked, we had like one guy, like a sales, biz dev guy, who rented an Airbnb for 3 months in Manhattan. I would fly probably every second or third week from London. Not that I also not have father duties. So that was kind of intense from that angle. But I think the way it's set up and the value you get is definitely worth it. So in FinTech Innovation Lab, it's somewhat different, right? In a sense that they pair you up with 6 or 7 or 5 organizations with a dedicated person who you interact with weekly, and then they kind of take you through different teams in that organization, essentially showing you to the team. Team knows the background that this is kind of the program, and this is kind of the innovative businesses who may be able to help us out. If they do, and we sign them as a vendor, ultimately New York benefits, their company benefits because they get a service, and so on and so forth. So it's a very much, it's kind of like very much, so kind of like 6 companies times, so let's say 6 teams, so like 36, almost like a sales interactions, less of a sales, more kind of like consultative, whatever the problem you have, and hey, well, can we solve this problem by doing XYZ using our product? So, and then obviously on top of that, they run the whole, like, let's help you guys improve pitch, connect you to investors, angels, advisors, so all the other thing. But what I did like about FinTech Innovation Lab was this angle where you actually talk to these big businesses, and you get to talk to managing directors running different teams who you would otherwise not get any access. And here you are kind of paraded through the front door with the person already in the company. He sets up everything, gives the context and background. Then he helps to kind of organize the whole process, post-meeting, pre-meeting. So that's kind of very valuable from understanding, first and foremost, understanding your product development perspective, and secondly, then from actually getting through the door. So net as a result, now we work with 2 Fortune 500 companies, which basically came out of this, which is really good. And we are now able to show that, hey, Genius AI works very well for small, medium-sized businesses, but also we are not, shying away, and we are able to work equally well with, big corporates. We're able to show how they benefit. We're able to show that we are able to execute the sales, dance and go past all the vendor, interviews and process and so on and so forth. Otherwise, like typically that process takes, let's say, if you sell to Fortune 500, it takes about a year, give or take. Is like a typical cycle. So for a smaller company, being able to show that is very helpful for, at the very least, fundraising conversations and other sales interactions. So we ended up, so it was 6 of us. One of us kind of out, the CEO, because he's having a baby. Others kind of flying around, building the thing, making sure the business works. And I was basically fundraising also at the time. So we ended up closing around during that time. So it was pretty intense, but it was good fun. Manhattan is good fun, loads of energy. So you open the window, you hear the buzz, everything is alive 24/7. It's a great environment to be in, highly recommended.
Thanks, Victor. So you're traveling constantly. You're in a new city. It's a different culture than what you're used to. You have probably also had those madness mentoring sessions and interactions. What was the hardest thing for you? Was there any point that you thought, oh my God, this is crazy? What was, maybe there was something like a shift in mindset that you needed to experience? What was the kind of most difficult thing for you to do there?
The hardest part is actually sleeping on the plane, and 2 times a week. So kind of, as in like, mentally, it's hard, but there are harder things in life. Paulus may attest, if he had his, SEAL training, there's this thing called, extreme ownership. You just own it and do it. There are worse things you can be at. So I think, in our case, it wasn't, it wasn't kind of that hard. You just kind of, buckle up and execute. It just kind of logistically hard, physically hard. It's tough because your family is in London. You're actually flying to New York. You spend a week there, have to go back, or the other way from San Francisco to New York. So that kind of made it harder for us because we were not based there. Having said that, there were a few companies who were also not based primarily in New York, and they also kind of like had this logistical challenge. So that was difficult to manage. And I imagine, for Techstars, like you physically kind of ship and go to that location. So it's also, a logistical exercise. But I like the energy. I like talking to many people, figuring out things and moving things fast. So this is a perfect environment for that.
Thank you. Paulus, maybe I'll address this question to you. A lot of the accelerators have been forced to move online, and you've had that experience online. Maybe how do you extract the same value from participating in the accelerators when you can't meet potential clients and people or your mentors face to face? Do you think there's still a lot of value there? And maybe do you have to look at the process a bit differently to be able to reap those benefits?
Yeah, thank you for a question. So I believe it's two different things. For like mentoring, official parts, talking with, or like adhering to the introductions, which was made by the accelerator. I believe there is no huge difference. Are you doing it online or offline? Of course, preferably offline sometimes, but no big difference. But what differs in at least accelerator like Antler is when you have to find this co-founder out of his 100 people. And that part becomes difficult when all the people are distanced from each other, and you cannot meet them and look them in the eye, or go to have a beer with 10 guys and then to think that, all right, so this 1 or 2 guys or girls were like the ones I would like to talk more about potentially starting the company. So this part becomes extremely difficult. And Antler also has a online version of its accelerator. I believe they have one cohort per year or something like that, where it's totally online. Anyone can apply to like the first part. But after they find the team members, they can form the teams and apply to the second phase to get the pre-seed. So my friend actually applied to that part, that program, and his experience was that it's so difficult to you basically have to take it like a numbers game. So I have to talk one-on-one with a number of people to find a match, understand would I like to work with them or not. So this is for Antler when you have to find the co-founder. But for all this introductions, mentoring, when we are like, and even now we are in Lithuania, a lot of stuff happens in Stockholm. We get, I believe, the same level of value doing it totally online.
Great. Well, now let's travel back to our local accelerators and to the local ecosystems. And in wrapping up this discussion, I want to talk a bit about how you feel that global experience that you've had and the kind of lessons learned, how they can be applied back at home. So maybe Paulus, let's stick with you. What do you think our local accelerators could do to better support entrepreneurs? Maybe what are some of the biggest advantages that you saw at other accelerators that you think could be implemented to help grow the ecosystem?
So first of all, I believe we are doing quite good now, especially in the recent years. And the biggest distinctions probably are the sizes of ecosystems and what you can get as an introduction from this ecosystem to outside world. So of course, like cities like Stockholm, which has like 6 unicorns, and a lot of people are like based in a close proximity who does the startups, helps a lot. But I believe if Lithuania and Accelerators keep course of what we are doing now, and we have our own success stories, a lot of people like bringing their own networks, extending each other's networks, I believe it will happen. It just have to take some more time to develop these types of international global connections.
Thank you. Hedi, I think you had kind of maybe a bit different perspective where you see that Estonia in particular and Baltic countries have a lot to offer even on the global scale. So how do you think we can compete with global accelerators, and maybe what are the lessons or advice that we can give to the government?
I think probably two maybe points to it. One is that what we as a kind of Baltic can really shine brighter is obviously some focused areas. Lithuania has really been kind of holding the flag high around the fintech and all the kind of financial world, and the kind of regulatory environment has really kind of focused very much on that. Estonia has been really good with all the kind of e-governance and the ease of digitalization, ease of doing business and cyber. So obviously this kind of more focused areas where we know that actually people around the world know about it and come and actually want to learn from our experts. So these are definitely, I would say, great areas to kind of have more focused kind of accelerators. Obviously, to kind of incubate younger, very kind of just starting startups, I would always say is good in the local environment, because often most startups pick up the kind of pre-seed angel round investments anyway locally. So what would be kind of from my side, few things that I can really highlight from Estonia, which are really good, is really we have a very strong and very active kind of startup community, which supports itself very kind of closely. So in a way, this kind of I don't know, it kind of works as a small accelerator itself, because we all help try to kind of push and support. But what can really state to you, I really like what UK has done with this. There are this kind of support schemes like this EISs and etc., where actually the people that invest or angels that invest will receive some cutbacks from the state back from the investment. And I think what we as smaller countries are also good is kind of this kind of sandboxing as such, that to really build this kind of simple sandboxes, how to do business and test things out fast in certain environments. And I think maybe these would be some of the niches to touch upon. Maybe also, and as example, what we spoke with when we prepared, I was part of helping to build one accelerator in Estonia around film tech. So Estonia has the kind of leading A category film festival in this region. So around that one, there was a natural place where lots of kind of film industry experts also gathered often. So it was very simple to build something connected with that. So things like that, I would say, the Baltics should definitely pick up and use for their advantage. So all the countries have something that is really kind of top notch. So yeah, just a few thoughts from my side.
Thanks a lot for sharing. Edmundas, maybe let's turn to you. What do you think are the biggest challenges where government could take very precise actions to help starting entrepreneurs?
Well, I'm a strong believer in reducing red tape. There's still a lot of bureaucracy, and still, like, even starting a company, you have to face some ridiculous challenges where, for example, you can't name your company by a name that you want in Lithuania. It has to be in Lithuanian. It has to be according to specific rules. And that actually takes the longest part in the whole company setup process. So now to set up a company, it could take probably less than a day in Lithuania, but because the name has to be verified by some humans and some Lithuanian language commission, it takes 3 days. That's ridiculous. There's and there's all kinds of examples in setting up a company and managing a company where it's totally unnecessary. We're talking so much how we want to build global businesses and help them in Lithuania, and then you can't name your company in English. That's just ridiculous. Once you set up a company, for example, a lot of us working remotely, my team were working from home. According to Lithuanian law, we still have to do all kinds of health and safety checkups and have registered office and have in paper all kinds of journals of fire safety, even if we don't really use an office, if we work from a co-working space and barely go there anyway. So there's so much red tape, and for example, it's really hard to bring in colleagues or even co-founders with shares in the company from outside the European Union. I had to face that my former co-founders from Belarus in my previous startup, where it took a year probably for them to get a residence permit for just 1 year. All kinds of bureaucratic challenges, and I think that should be the focus of removing these stupid old legacy procedures that don't add value, don't increase safety or anything for anyone, and so I think that should be the priority.
Hey, thanks. Victor, let's crown this conversation and discussion. And I'm going to challenge you. If you are named the Minister of Innovation tomorrow, what would be the key changes, maybe, or the key actions that you would implement to help local companies grow?
So important to realize that Lithuania is a very specific country. Now, I moved back after 17 years living abroad. So I happened to be in Kaunas. And every day I basically drive to Vilnius. And on the road from Kaunas to Vilnius is like a town called Elektrėnai. So the interesting thing here is that it's named after basically, electricity. And there is even like a popular song, telling the story of electrification and electricity. And I was thinking, is there a country in the world where people create songs about electricity and the progress of technology? And not even that, the capital, of Lithuania, Vilnius. The legend how it was founded. It was founded because the Grand Duke heard a robotic iron monster. He thought it may be a wolf, but actually it was a robot. Back in the day. So I think we have all the ingredients for really killing it in technology, robotics, AI, and machine learning. So if I were the minister, I would follow the quote of Exupéry, and I would say, look, you need to be, if you want to build a ship and sail the seas, you shouldn't be telling your sailors, or workers how to build a ship. You should tell them a story so they have a longing for the sea. So I think that would be, a good first start.
Wow, thank you so much, Victor. I couldn't have summarized it better. And really, Paulius, Hedy, Edmundas, Victor, we are so grateful for you dedicating your precious time and for sharing your honest accounts and advice and things that can inspire the government as well and how to move forward. So we are internally grateful for you for taking time to be part of this discussion. And thank you everyone who was watching. If you have any questions, you're welcome to contact us directly and message me directly. And we wish you all a very smooth journey.
Thank you.